Thank you for tuning in to the Weekly Double Down, a daily Double Down Network podcast. My name's Cody, I am your host, and this week I will be discussing 2 war films with my buddy and my newest host in the network, Nate. First, I would like to say that due to the content of today's films, there may be some language and dialogue not suitable for children in today's episode. With all the fun stuff out of the way, let's head over to the hotspot to get into some highlights of this week's news. Welcome to the Hotspot, the segment of the show where I bring you the latest movie news, leaks, and reviews all in one place really quickly. Last week we discussed a lot of DC news, so this week I want to focus on some MCU news, especially the delayments of Avengers, The Kang Dynasty, and Secret Wars. Now, in SDC Hall H last year, we got ridiculous reveals, which included plans for 2 new Avengers films that were going to release in the same calendar year. Now, it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing that anymore, and it looks more like Avengers Kang Dynasty is going to come out in 2025, and The Secret Wars will come out in 2026. Now, I think that's a really smart move, along with some of the other moves that we're going to discuss, and I'll talk about that just in a minute. But there are also talks that Doctor Strange 3 is being quote-unquote fast-tracked to come out before Avengers Kang Dynasty. There's also talks that attached to that, we will be getting a Strange Academy series, which will focus on Wong and America Chavez as we focus more on the mysticism side of the MCU. This will also reportedly be tied directly into the Kang Dynasty. Now, with that coupled with the Armor Wars turning into a film and the spacing out of things, I think this is really, really, really good news for the MCU. It seemed like Phase 4, they were just like quantity over quality, and they turned out and gave us as many projects as they could. Now, with the release slate that we're looking at less projects, but more spaced out to give them better quality. I think it's going to be fantabulous. Now, with Doctor Strange 3, I think it is very important that Doctor Strange 3 happens before Kang Dynasty. I mean, with the cliffhangers and the talks of incursions and everything that happened in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I think that it is imperative that we get a Doctor Strange 3 at least in between the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars to just help fill in the spaces a little more. I also think that we're really, really, really going to need a Spider-Man 4 movie to help get our street-level Avengers ready to go for the Kang Dynasty. So be expecting to see those soon. Also, there is talks of a lot of trailers being released for the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl will be premiering on Fox, which is very convenient because now Disney no longer has to pay the fees for Super Bowl commercials since they own Fox. With this, there's been reports emerged that we will be getting multiple Marvel trailers, and with what Marvel's shown us over the past couple of years, they like to give us trailers during big football games. So expect something to hear some things about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy, and there's even reports that the Marvels trailer will be dropping, and it kind of makes sense. It's less than 6 months away from the release date at that point if they drop that trailer. that is pretty much it for the hotspot today. That is mostly all of our Marvel news. Of course, if you would like to keep up with news a little bit better, you guys can always follow us on our blog. Leave us comments there on stuff that you want to hear more about, and we will definitely be bringing you more of that content in the future. If you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to us on Twitter, and we can discuss anything that you might have a question about. Alright, so welcome to the main segment of the show where we're going to be discussing two films. I am here joined with my buddy Nate. How you doing, Nate?
Doing pretty good. Happy to be here.
Nate, tell me a little bit about yourself before we get into these god-awful movies that you made me watch.
Insulting to start off with, but been a friend of Cody's for a while. We kind of split apart for a little bit, but back at it, and just here living life and grinding.
So Nate's a butcher, and that kind of makes sense because he's a little short, stocky boy.
Yeah, I like playing with meat and carrying it around.
So yeah, that's a good preface for Nate. But Nate brought two movies for us today, and I'm going to throw it to him. Which one do you want to discuss first?
I'm feeling Devotion since I've heard you don't like it that much.
Alright, like I said before we recorded, Devotion is Top Gun Maverick with lots of crying.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. It's an old school Top Gun.
So, tell me a little bit about Devotion and what it's about.
So, Devotion is simply a African American pilot in the U.S. Navy, kind of finding his way and happened to be in the course of the Korean War and kind of forming a brotherhood with a white pilot, which just wasn't usual for that time. Yeah,
what was the movie? Red Tails? About the World War One, I want to say it's World War One fighter squadron that was completely made out of African Americans.
Oh, you mean the Tuskegee Airmen? That was World War II.
Okay, yeah, but they had their own film. I think it's called Red Tails or something.
I think so. I remember a history teacher talking about it before.
Yeah, Mr. Spencer used to talk about it all the time.
Yeah, that's probably a good starting point if you want to look at that. Because, I mean, it would talk about everything that would have happened. Well, it is, yeah, Red Tail.
Yeah, so, that kind of, leads directly into Devotion.
Yeah, you'll see, the more philosophical issues that were happening at the time with, racial violence and racial inequality, even in the military, even though they were desegregated at that point in time.
I mean, I think they do a really good job with that, especially at the beginning of the film when he's just dancing with his wife and playing with his daughter.
Yeah. That was one point that kind of hit home, but then later in the film, you see the Brotherhood form, and then things get really teary-eyed on my side.
Well, yeah, it gets really teary-eyed, especially when they give him the watch.
Yeah.
But, I'm just going to do this for spoilers. I'm going to say that if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It is a pretty decent movie. I don't like it. I'm probably going to rag on it here in a little bit just to get on Nate's nerves. But, spoiler warning, just so you guys know. Yeah, the part where he gave him the watch, and he's like, tell the brothers I love them too. Bro, that really kind of that hit home.
Yeah, because I mean, he, in essence, was one of the first pilots to land on an aircraft carrier that was of African American descent. And that was
the first?
I don't know if he was the first, but I do know he would be one of them. Because I mean, during World War II, I would assume they maybe had pilots. Don't fact check me on that one if you guys want to, but I'm not 100% on that. But yeah.
I mean, we already know that they had black pilots, but I don't remember them. They were in a specific area in France, from what I remember.
That, and then if we're thinking of the Tuskegee Airmen, I believe they were in the Pacific Theater, flying over
the Southeastern Islands.
Yeah, somewhere around there, but I don't think they ever did naval stuff. I think they were part of the actual Air Force or Army at that point in time.
Yeah.
So, would assume, I mean, during training and stuff, when with our main character, he'd probably be one of the first.
Yeah. I mean, it was very obvious, especially with the way that the aircraft carriers were. It was very early in the day of them developing aircraft, like aircraft carriers, and using it for flight and the air advantage in tactics.
For sure.
But it does bring me to the point, like, we're talking about landing on the aircraft carrier. And one point about this movie is the most, or maybe the second most, because we'll get on to the most intense scene in the film. But him trying to land was very intense. I really liked the way that they did that.
Indeed, it really brought a feeling of you're in it with him and you want him to succeed and you're struggling to find it, and you know everything he has to prove, essentially. He has to prove it for the Brotherhood, essentially.
Yeah.
That he can do it. Because I don't remember if it was before that, but he met the Marines. The white Marines who were like, you don't belong here.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if they had that interaction before or after that.
I think that one was after, and then what really solidified that being so, like, monumental in the film was the next time someone tried to land on the plane.
It was the white pilot just came in too low, and from their training they knew not to throttle that thing up. He did it and just right into the side or back of the carrier.
Yeah. And I mean, it just made it seem like, oh wow, he really could have lost his life.
Yeah.
And in between there, you have that interaction with the Marines at the casino.
That as well, yeah. That was a tough one to keep watching because it's just really brought to light the hate that they had, and that was really made me feel something inside, being somebody who loves history, just being like, damn.
Well, and the fact, of the matter was that the Frenchmen at the casino entrance, they were so quick to make sure that a black American was not to get in there. But once he proved that he knew their language just as well as they did, they had to kind of shut up. So it was more than just the skin tone. Mm-hmm. It was also on a nationality basis, and showing, especially in that time frame with the Cold War brewing then and there, it shows the realistic nature that we're actually at war and everyone's on edge.
Yeah.
So
that, and I'm gonna skip a little bit to their first mission just because that was a great thing to see. They were at the
bridges.
Border. Yeah, it was the border of North Korea and China, and they're like, we can only attack the North Korea side, and there wasn't really anything there. And then they opened fire from the Chinese side, and they can't do anything. And it was him and the white pilot that he formed a bond with, that they got in a mean dog fight. Yeah. Loved that. That was probably one of the best action scenes, like Top Gun-esque, action, that I loved it so much. And I loved just the planes that they use in that, because me loving planes as a nerd, it was awesome to watch a jet fighter on a, I guess, propellered plane. Yeah. I guess would be the best way to say it, and just how they outmaneuvered and the bond and teamwork that they use. And then him, the African-American pilot, disobeying orders and being like, I have one bomb or one rocket left or something, and taking the last bridge out was just, type of thing.
So, one thing that I wanted to say, do you know anything about the circumstances around Top Gun Maverick? And I'm going to continue to reference this because these movies are so freaking similar.
If you start talking, I probably will, but...
Okay, so way back when we did our podcast, we did top 5 movies of 2018 and most anticipated movies of 2019. Mm-hmm. One of yours was Top Gun Maverick.
Was?
And that movie was supposed to come out in 2019.
Dang.
It got pushed back so far that it got moved to just this past year, 2022. But it was done the entire time. They just wanted more money, and because of COVID and everything, they were like, we're just going to wait. So, in all honesty, I think this movie was meant to come out this past year, and Top Gun Maverick was meant to come out 3 years prior. But instead, what we got was just a year filled with fantastic and visually pleasing dogfight scenes.
I can agree because I've seen some of the dog fights. I love them.
Dude, do you have Paramount Plus?
I do actually.
All right, go watch Top Gun Maverick, you fool. It's literally on there.
All right.
I watched Devotion on there, passed out, and Top Gun Maverick came on. That's showing you literally the parallel between these films.
Well, yeah, like you said, it's just an old school Top Gun, just beautifully done to me.
I think it was really nicely done. And the fact that, like, with the differences in Top Gun Maverick, they actually filmed in their fighter jets.
Yeah.
In those fighter jets, those are CGI, unless they're on the ground, you know?
Yeah, but have you ever been in a cockpit of one of those planes?
You said cockpit.
Yeah. They're...
No,
I've been in a couple of them when I go to, like, the Air Force museums.
Yeah.
But they got it really accurate, though, and, like, fairly accurate since I'm not the biggest expert on those planes as well, but, like...
Well, they also have to fit a giant camera in there.
Yeah, but it's kind of was just awesome, you know, making the parallel between being in the cockpit itself and kind of knowing what they're dealing with, because, like, the fighter jet itself was, like, the most advanced thing that they've ever seen, being, like, the jet fighter.
Oh, yeah, especially when they're talking about, like, the new planes and the torque and everything.
Yep.
Like, when they're talking about the difference in torque, like, it was that major to
Yeah.
where, like, they could have had so many scenes where there's pilots crashing left and right,
sure.
but you can't show a whole bunch of that, or else you're just
Yeah.
gonna get shit on as a film.
For sure, like, and then, I mean, you're just going to bring the morality of it to an extent that people just probably don't want to watch it, being like, all these lives are lost.
Yeah.
But also, I think that's a great thing that the movie did was the morality of war itself and
Yeah.
the bond that we still haven't even talked about yet.
Okay, yeah, so let's get into the bond you want to talk about so badly.
So,
Since you like brothers and
Yeah, look,
guys
I'm-
getting really close to each
yeah.
other.
I'm going to look up their names just to make sure I'm not getting this wrong, and I'm not going to keep calling them the pilots. The two pilots. I don't...
Dude, you're the one who wanted me to watch this movie. I crammed both of these movies in yesterday.
Yeah? So what would have been? Jesse Brown and
Yeah, Jesse Brown. I
and
don't
Tom
remember
Hunter?
the white.
Is that the...
Yeah, that's the white guy.
So, those two guys. Jesse Brown, real life character. This was actually happened in 1952, 1953-ish.
Right at the beginning
Yeah.
of the Korean War.
And so Jesse Brown's a naval pilot, as we said. He's been there for a couple years now, you know, trying to prove that he can do it. And the new guy comes in, Mr. Tom Hunter, and they get off to a rocky start, but in the end, they end up growing a really fond brotherhood and friendship. To when they deployed, Jesse's wife was like, "Protect him, be there with him for me." And in the end of the movie, which I feel like we'll discuss, maybe spoiler to people, he stayed there and did what he could, and it was something that really brought to light, you know,
well,
the mortality.
since you have some information like regarding what happens after the film, let's go ahead and discuss the end of the film. And I mean, we've already gotten past spoilers, so people who are still listening have probably already seen it, or else they want it spoiled.
For sure.
So go ahead and tell us what happens right at the end of the film.
Probably the last 15-20 minutes, Jesse goes down. He's got shot down from a mission. He has to scuttle the plane. And he's essentially trapped in the cockpit, and he can't get out. So the other pilot comes down and scuttles his own plane to try to rescue him, and he just couldn't do it. And Jesse ends up essentially dying in enemy territory and never being found again. His body was never recovered from North Korea, and they searched for years, and just nothing was found. And that was a really heart-wrenching thing, because if anybody who listens knows military guys or has been in the military, you know the brotherhood that's formed, and to lose your brother and watch him die, essentially, and not be able to do anything, really hurts. And it was something that really was just made that movie 10 times better, in my opinion.
I mean, I definitely agree. like throughout the film, like I said, is they bring many moments that are high tension and high stakes, and it really seals the value of brotherhood, and it really seals the values of bonding with those that you put your life and you trust with your life in, you know. And I think that it did a really good job, like Jesus shit. I think it did a really good job, like tying it all together at the end and giving us something that was easy to watch, but yet challenged us as a viewer still.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think they did a really good job balancing the film, all in all. But because Top Gun got released this year, Top Gun's better, and this is just a copy of Top Gun, and now I have to rag on it because they both came out the same year.
Rag on it, go for it.
Dude, Jonathan Majors cried so much in that movie. So much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when he's sitting there yelling at himself in the mirror, let him just yell at himself. He doesn't need to cry again.
But
he already cried 10 times in the past 10 minutes.
But that added to the wanting to prove that you're good, and, like, going through, the 30, 40 years he's been alive, that being told he can't fly. He can't do it.
But he's been flying for, like, the past 10 years.
Yeah, but this is his way of degrading himself to the point where he's like, I have, like, back against the wall, I'm fighting for this. And I think that did a really good part for the movie. And then to watch, the white pilot completely eat shit trying to land just really proved, like, he can do it. If a white pilot's gonna fail, they're like,
Yeah, it's really just the pilot.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my point. Why did he need to cry? Why couldn't he just hype himself up and just tear himself down real quick like a real man? Why did he have to cry about it?
He did tear himself down like a real man.
And then he cried about it.
And so did I cry. I cried too. I felt that.
I mean, I get it, but no, he cried so much. There's like 40 minutes in the movie where like every 5 minutes he is crying
because it's sad
and nothing's happened yet.
It's playing my heartstrings.
In the last 10 minutes of the movie when he's stuck in the cockpit. Okay, fine, he's stuck in a cockpit in North Korea. That's cool. I'd be crying too, but you're trying to pretend to be your dad in the mirror and you're gonna cry about it? Come on, stop being a bitch.
I'll throw you back there and let you feel how it feels. Let you cry to yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, you know what? At least my bathrooms are separated.
Oh, god damn.
And I don't mean from the texture or color of your skin. I mean, I don't want someone with a big old swinging dick walking in while I'm sitting down taking a piss.
You sat down to piss?
Dude, I
goddamn
told
woman.
you. Yeah, I transitioned.
Oh, God. Man, I'm sorry. I would have brought a gift or something for you at this point.
Is there anything else you want to hit on with this movie?
Not really. I did... Actually, one more thing, actually. When he said to his wife to, like, look across the ocean and that he'll be there, like, waving or whatever he said, and how she did it and she continued doing it was somehow poetic to me and very lost for words, I guess, on that. It's just how, I guess, beautiful that would have been.
I mean, yeah, if you're going for the beauty factor, I will say one other thing in the film that probably a lot of people forget about after they watch it is when he's given the watch. I feel like that really pulled some heartstrings. It really shows the community that the black community was trying to bring together to just keep strength among themselves and not be beaten down nearly as much.
For sure.
So I think that it did a really good job portraying all the different levels of racism and the way that even our own soldiers had to fight it.
Yeah, that right there, you're on nail on the head. Just beautifully said right there. It's just how well it layered all that together.
Yeah. So, with that being said, that's all we have for Devotion, but I'm going to give you guys a couple bad pieces of news in the next segment, and then we'll be right back to talk about Nate's second pick in film this week, which is
All Quiet on the Western Front.
And we'll be right back after this short clip. into the downside, the negative Nancy segment, bringing you the worst news in film. And when I mean worst news in film, I also mean television, because can we please talk about the Arrowverse? I just want to say this. Gotham Knights is an abomination. It's blasphemous to Batman, and I think it should be canceled. If you guys saw the images they released of their Batman, it's pretty much just a man in a business suit with a plastic mask, and it really doesn't do anything justice. It ignores the Joker. It acts like everything in Batman has already happened. Everything popular that you know has happened, and we are dealing just with the descendants of these awful people that are all sociopaths and psychopaths, even Batman. But I have a feeling that a lot of the villains in the show are going to be original Batman villains, that these are their children taking their place in weird, twisted ways. And honestly, I'm not all for it. I'm against it completely. It looks awful. I do not want to see the Joker's daughter. I think this is stupid. It's not menacing at all. It's like the Arrowverse has just decided that they are going to push content and force us to like whatever Jeff Johns is into at the time. And sure, there could be great Gotham Knight comics. I'm sure there are. Just like there are great Green Lantern comics. It doesn't mean turning it into a property that is a visual property, especially in film or television. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's awful, and I think you guys need to stop. The Flash was carried on for way too long. Arrow was carried on for way too long. They didn't let the shows die off when they needed to. Arrow should have, stopped at season 5. That should have been the end of Arrow. We had already received season 4, which was just meh. I mean, season 2 was great. Season 1 was great. Season 3 was pretty good. Season 4 was not so good, but then you go right back to season 5 and it was great. And The Flash, that just fell off real hard. Season 1, great. Season 2, great. Season 3, pretty darn good. Season 4, I stopped watching halfway through, and I haven't watched another episode of The Flash since. And then you get to DC's Legends of Tomorrow's first 3 seasons, some of the best television shows ever. And this was right at the time where everything was transitioning from, cable produced television shows to see that Netflix and Amazon can make their own shows too. And that you can start taking these and making them a little bit better in quality. So, the continuation, The Flash is getting its 9th season. I think that's way too many seasons. I think it should have ended after the 3rd season. When Arrow ended, the Arrowverse should have ended. I'm sorry you didn't get to set up everything, but you could very easily stop and do it again. Look at Smallville. Yes, we know you made it one of the different Earths, but you could have left it a completely separate entity and be like, that's its own universe. Justin Hartley is Green Arrow over there. Alan Richardson, whatever his name is, Thad, he's your Aquaman over there. You have your own people over there. Well, then now you could have your own people yet again, but you continue to draw this out into subpar and mediocre at best content that honestly I haven't enjoyed watching in years. And as a giant DC fan, stop. Just stop, okay? The CW needs to be shut down. Their licensing agreements need to be revoked. And Jeff Johns should never be able to touch another DC property again. I don't care if it's comic books. I don't care if it's a television show. I don't even care if it's a freaking mobile app video game. Don't let Jeff Johns touch it. On the other side of the downside, I'm just gonna... This is a personal thing. Agatha Coven of Chaos and Ironheart are being delayed. Now, Agatha Coven of Chaos, I had zero want or desire to watch at all until I saw Evan Peters will be back as Ralph Boner. It just gives me... confidence that we're going to see the House of M storyline played out properly. And I feel I see the groundwork being laid right now. And as we know, Phase 7 is going to be more focused on the mutants than anything. So honestly, I just see Agatha Coven of Chaos setting up Season 7 or Phase 7 really well for the MCU, especially in the fact that Scarlet Witch could bring about M-Day. And as far as Ironheart goes, we finally know who the villain is. We know that it's going to take mysticism and it's going to take science and it's going to smash them together. And we know the main antagonist is going to be the Hood. And we also know the Hood is connected to Mephisto. And if you are a Marvel fan at all whatsoever, you know that Mephisto's been teased for a long time, and we're all really, really, really excited to see what happens with it. So, really looking forward to those, but I'm really sad they did get pushed back. Agatha Coven of Chaos could be coming as early as the beginning of next year. We'll just have to wait and see, but Ironheart has been pushed off from this year to next year and has not been given an official release date or time yet. So honestly, what I say is DC TV, you guys need to stop. Marvel TV, you guys are doing a pretty decent job. I'm glad you guys are taking a little bit of a break. It breaks my heart that I'm not getting to see these properties this year, but I will wait, and I can't wait to see what the quality is with those and the insane things that these shows are going to set up. But that's all we have for the downside. I'm sorry for interrupting your show, but now if you'd like to hear Nate's voice again, you can right after this. Well, listeners, I'm very sorry that you guys had to hear that. Whatever news I just gave you guys in that segment probably sucked because it is called the Bad News Spot. So, take that with a grain of salt, if you will. But we're back with Nate yet again. And now we're going to discuss what film? What?
All Quiet on the Western Front.
Now, can you actually give me the real title?
You want a real title?
Well, say the real title, yeah.
Yeah, All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah, no, say the real title, though.
Oh, fuck you. You know I'm slow.
Okay, so what I was trying to get him to say the German title because this is a German film. Would you like to?
You want me to try saying Yerman?
No, not after you said German as Yerman.
Yerman.
Just stop. But go ahead, give us a brief description of what it is.
Simply you're just following the war machine of World War One through the eyes of primarily Paul, but a few other guys, smaller characters.
So, who is Paul?
Paul is going to be the German recruit that we experienced a lot of the atrocities and moral conflicts of the war through his eyes.
So, before we get into it, All Quiet on the Western Front is a German-made film by a German director. I think his name's Fred something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's a German film discussing the brutalities of the Western Front in World War One. It's based off of two films prior to it. One is, they're both under the same title. So this is a remake, but it is much more artistic. And as we were talking about, there's a lot more symbolism in this that reminds me of Saving Private Ryan, but at the same time strikes me completely different way. So let's hear what you have to say about that.
On the fact of Private Ryan, they try to bring that violence and brutality that war films show us, but put it in a more relatable view, I guess would be a good way to say it. As I feel that All Quiet on the Western Front is a real anti-war movie, if that can make sense with everybody. As war films kind of try to show you war is bad, but it really just fantasizes it. And this movie does a really good job of showing you that you're just a cog in the machine and that your life, a death in a war, especially this war, doesn't matter.
Okay, yeah. So go over some of the elements that have no spoilers in it that you really enjoy about this film. I know for me personally, the acting was really well. It was really hard to keep up with since it's all dubbed.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I'd rather just be hearing them speak the German and French. But I really liked the acting and the way that you could see the differences in the way the soldiers acted, especially when you're following the French soldiers versus the German soldiers. So what are some elements of the film that really stuck to you and solidified this as a good movie besides the story?
The history itself and how it stayed fairly true to it. The last a week of the war itself that the movie portrayed was a little off and a little backwards, that I would have to say, as I'm not trying to give out the spoiler, but it did mess up one thing in particular.
What, at the very end?
At the very end, how
well, I'll give the spoiler warning first, and I wanted to talk about this. I just wanted to make sure we got all of our thoughts that are spoiler free out of the way first, so we don't spoil things, because this is a fairly new film.
It is. It's really good. Haven't watched it, please watch it, or one of the renditions. The 1930s version, pure gold. Please watch one.
You
of
watched
them.
that in What's His Face class, didn't you?
No, actually, I watched it on my own.
Oh, okay. If you want to check out another film that's black and white that is also from around the same era, if you want to check out Casablanca, honestly, yes, it is a romance comedy, but it actually deals with the underlying effects of war and the aftermath of war in a whole very well, especially at the end of that film. So if you're looking for something to fill your classic need, check out one of those two films. But like we said, spoiler warning now. If you haven't seen the film, go watch it and then come finish the episode. If you want it spoiled, well, you're a piece of shit. So, what was your favorite part of this movie?
My favorite part... Are we looking action wise or a philosophical movement here?
Give me both. Give me one and then give me the other.
Action wise, probably I think it was closer to the end of the movie, and the French attacked one of Paul's positions, and they brought out the super heavy tanks, and they had all the guys in the back, flamethrowers, just carnage going on. If we're looking at action, I think it was very well depicted. But I do have issues with it still.
Okay, well, what's your issues with the action then?
It wasn't accurate to what flamethrowers would have done, because those guys are right there in the enemy trenches, flaming it up, I guess.
Yeah.
And strategically, those weren't really used that way.
Yeah.
And then, in this particular battle, this French tank wasn't even used during that period of the war.
Okay.
So I love it, because I got to see a French super heavy tank and all that fun jazz, but it just wasn't historically accurate. But the action itself was very nice to watch.
I will say, they did a really good job on making it, at least the action and the gore, I will say. The gore in particular. They did a really good job at making that as realistic as possible, especially when you see soldiers switch to their freaking shovels, which is, incredibly accurate for films. A lot of accounts of the war, people would just shoot that first clip and then go straight to their shovel.
Shovel, bayonet,
Yeah.
whatever you can grab to beat the other man. 'Cause, they at this point in the war, it's been 4 years. They're everybody's down, dragging through the mud. Just you gotta do what you gotta do to survive at this point.
Yeah. I will say historically, it did a fairly good job at representing everything that was going on. But like you said, we'll talk about the fallacy at the
Yeah.
end. But philosophically, what is your favorite part of this movie?
That, as I stated a little earlier, just without much details, that most of the time it showed the lives in this war that were lost didn't really matter, and it was really good in the opening sequences, where one of the side characters before Paul was introduced dies, and he gets stripped of his clothing and it gets sent back to Germany, and they wash it, restitch it, and give it to a new recruit, Paul.
And Paul literally sees the other guy's names.
Yeah, and the general like kind of tries to rip it off before he can see it, but sees it, and just to show that without really explaining it, that life that was lost didn't matter.
Yeah.
And especially on this war, because there are those fantasies that war is bad, but it's also usually going to be like have an inherent good for you, like World War II. Inherently that was good, but atrocities were still made by even the good side.
Well, yeah. Either way, hundreds of thousands of lives were lost at a time.
Yeah.
Like, literally within minutes, these things were happening. So the way you look at war is there's always the good that can come from it, but more times than not, it's always going to have a negative effect. And what I think it did really good was with into the film, you see Paul and that younger kid create a relationship, and Paul's looking out for him constantly. Well, I'm just going to skip and talk about that end fight when they're charging into the trenches, which we'll talk about. That wasn't completely accurate.
Yeah.
But right at the end of the war, and it just... he dies for this kid who just pretty much watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the kid was not very
Yeah.
far from where he was being drowned in mud and then tumbled into this bunker area where literally in the film it was depicted as less than half a minute before the war ended officially, he was stabbed with a bayonet through the heart. I think that kid was full of shit and was just scared, hiding while his friend died.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of that.
And I think it showed the fact that when it came down to it, even the German soldiers, they were all still thinking about themselves, which made the loss of Paul all the worse when he dies. And going to your point, showing that his life was meaningless. He was looking out for his comrades the entire time.
Yeah.
If he could save a life, he would. And eventually, he becomes the most futile death in the entire film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on, like, the way that not just this movie, but other films in Hollywood portray the fact of life and the loss of a life in a film? Because I feel like in Hollywood today, they're just like, oh, yep, that guy died.
Yeah, like, I mean, in the case of, like, Saving Private Ryan, just for the example of it, when whatever character Tom Hanks played, right, trying to protect actual Private Ryan, he dies, but he makes the heroic sacrifice. And that kind of turns it from an anti-war movie to a pro-war movie because of the hero sacrifice. Everybody wants to say, I sacrificed for my nation.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to say that my life mattered for my nation for whatever it was. So even with the violence that was shown in it, it still turned it to a neutral or pro-war movie.
Yeah.
And a fun thing I heard was an anti-war movie that's like comes out, you can tell if it's an anti-war by like recruitment. And like, you know, who is recruited or wants to join the military kind of after that. Like with Full Metal Jacket was meant to be an anti-war movie.
Yeah.
It complete opposite. It was increased recruiting like tenfold. So even though, you know, you had the violent scenes and like the boot camp looking like utter hell.
Well, so as I told you, the Double Down Family organization is starting a podcast called Current Conversations. We actually talk about Full Metal Jacket in one of our conspiracies.
Yeah?
Yeah, it gets really heavy. I'll tell you about it after, but Yeah, you might actually be interested in something I have to say about that.
Absolutely.
But going to what you said, yeah, the difference between a pro-war and anti-war movie, like, you have a lot of films out there that depict violence in brutal manners, and they're like, oh, well, a lot of times, people are like, oh, this movie's so pro-war because of the depiction of gore and violence in it, and quite honestly, I think it's the exact opposite. When you use extreme gore and violence, it's usually off-putting towards people. So the feel of your film is going to be off-putting, and it's going to be ew. You're not going to feel good about it. You're not going to feel good about watching it. And I think that's what All Quiet on the Western Front does really well is, they gave us so much gore that you're looking at as like, this was just wrong on all sides. And they didn't just show you the sides of the Allies, showed you the sides of the Germans and what they were doing. And they gave you this is my biggest plus of the film and my biggest con of the film, they give you the reasoning behind the Germans. Mm-hmm. And in my personal opinion, I don't think that war should have happened, and I think a lot of messed up things happened because of Germany. So I think that was kind of messed up in a way, and that it was represented in the light that it shouldn't have been. It is a German film too, so I kind of get the prejudice that would be there. But at the same time, it's an anti-war film because it doesn't depict anything that the Germans did in a good light. In fact, even though it's a German film, its antagonist, who makes the last push, is pretty much the villain of the whole movie. Yeah. So, brings us to that point. Do you want to talk about that last part of the war and like how they kind of got it inaccurate?
Yeah, I can definitely touch on that. There's a little symbolism for the armistice itself that they were trying to do, which was end the war on the 11th day of the 11th hour of the 11th month, which people kind of hit or miss on that, knowing that. But they purposely didn't end the war as soon as that treaty was signed. They said they gave it an extra 6 hours for what? To watch people die, essentially. And that was the accuracy of it. But then it depicted the French like celebrating, drinking, thinking the war is over. And the Germans were the aggressors pushing to the very last minute, which was actually the complete opposite. It was the French, the British, the Americans making those last pushes. And the Germans were over here celebrating, like, that. And it's just, that was, irked me, I guess would be a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Just because it depicted Germany as the final aggressor, which, in that case, it just wasn't correct.
Well, from what what I've read is that there were some areas of the line, or majority areas of the line, French and American soldiers did push, but there was a battalion of German troops that did push. And I think that they were following that battalion the whole time. And I think that one standalone battalion, because in the movie they show that he was refusing his orders and still attacked.
Yeah.
Anyways, and like you said, it goes to show the meaningless loss of life.
For sure.
So, I think that movie is very heavy, and when you picked out a couple war movies, I was like, great, Nate's gonna make me watch a couple war movies, and I was like, okay, it's not the worst thing that could happen. And then the crying and the Tom Cruise foolery.
I hit you with some heavy-hearted, like, philosophical movies that...
Which I was not expecting. So thank you very much for that. I really got to thank you. And also thank you for doing this show with me last second. You're saving my cute little baby behind.
Absolutely. I was hoping to be on here soon, but it was a lot sooner than I expected.
Well, for those viewers and listeners, I will just say Nate and I are going to be starting another spin-off podcast, which will be releasing monthly episodes, keeping up with mostly football news, but we'll be covering other sports stuff as well. Nate, if you want to plug anything, give the viewers anywhere to find you at.
I'll give you the IG, Nathan_8809. Besides that, y'all ain't gonna find me very easily.
And of course, listeners, you know where to find us. You can find us on Twitter at Double Down Blog. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, where we'll be posting all of our extra content on Patreon. You can find us at Double Down Movies. We really thank you guys for listening to this episode, and we can't wait to bring you more content next week. Thank you, listeners, for tuning into the show today. I really hope you enjoyed today's content. I had a great time with Nate doing this episode. I have a little bit of a public service announcement for you guys. At the beginning of this year, I set out to start my career in journalism. And when I mean start it, truly start it and do what I want to do and create a life that I want to live. And in that, I came up with the idea of the Daily Double Down, a blog where there would be 2 articles posted every day giving you content from film and television. Well, because of certain circumstances, I was able to start a podcast, and I'm really having a great time with this. And with my friends surrounding me and other people that I've met in the community and the warm welcome I've had from all my listeners, I've decided to grow what I'm doing into a little bit of a bigger operation. So what I will be doing is I will be continuing the blog, and this will become the Daily Double Down Network. You will be able to have the Daily Double Down blog. There will be other podcasts and other things on there. And the purpose of this announcement is just to go over some of the new things that are coming up, give you a look inside what this will look like, and just a bunch of content that you guys can expect. So going into it, every Thursday, the weekly Double Down will be releasing. This will be very similar to the show you guys heard earlier today. It'll feature a guest where they will select 2 films, and we will discuss them openly. Some things with the weekly Double Down. We will, on occasion, do top 10 lists. I know those are very, very fun for the movie community, and I think top 10 lists are a great way for the listeners to get to know the hosts a little bit better, and I just think they're a lot of fun. Additionally, the weekly Double Down will have a spin-off show / bonus episode where it'll have a monthly release on our Patreon. You can find us at Double Down Movies on Patreon. This is going to be a release radar review. Pretty much the day that a major movie releases, I'll go see it the day before. And as soon as it releases, right at midnight, I will have my spoiler and spoiler-free reviews up on the Patreon. There will be different tiers on the Patreon, and I will get into that a little bit more in the future. Along with the weekly Double Down, another weekly show that will be happening is the Current Conversations podcast. A lot of the work that I've done here in journalism has led me into some cool conspiracies and a little bit of the darker side of the internet, and I just found it super fascinating. So with a couple of my buddies, together we have a theologian, a linguist, and a journalist, and we will be doing roundtable discussions, mostly surrounding conspiracies, but also other mysterious events, creatures, whatever we choose. That'll be a really fun podcast, and the release date of that will be this Saturday. So coming up 2 days after the release of this episode, you guys will be able to find the Current Conversations podcast. I do just want to give a warm welcome to my 2 co-hosts, River and Luke. I'm really happy to have them join the network and just go on this journey with me as we go through some of the coolest conspiracy theories that we can find, give you our theories, and give you basic information surrounding them. It's going to be really awesome. Just a heads up, this is going to either be on Rumble, and it will be released on Rumble for free, and the unedited versions will be released on my Patreon as well. But you will not be able to find this podcast anywhere except for Rumble. That will be the only open source place. And if you want the bonus content from it, you will have to join the Patreon. But I guarantee you, with the Patreon comes some really, really, really great perks that I will get into at a later date. I'm still working on the details of it. Now, there are going to be some changes with the blog. As you guys have noticed, I haven't posted any articles since I uploaded the podcast. I really wanted to do this so I can start fresh on a new week and go week by week and do this on a basis and start to get my weekly schedule in order to be able to do all of these podcasts and produce all of this. And so with that, I've decided that on podcast release days, whether it's on Patreon or if it's open to the public, that on those days we will only post one article. With the Daily Double Down Network, I really want 2 pieces of content coming out every day, whether that's 2 podcasts, 2 articles, a podcast and an article, a podcast and a video. That's what I want to see for this coming in the future, at least for the next year or so. I'd like to grow it more and more and open up and get more people on board. And with that, I do have a couple additions that I'd like to add on to the addition of my 2 co-hosts on the Current Conversations pod. First of which, I would like to congratulate my first writer that's coming on. Cheyenne's going to be helping me out, filling in on the television side of things. So she'll be bringing you news, reviews, lists, leaks, and television for me. Not too sure on how much she'll be writing right off the gate, but I am super excited to see what she'll bring to the table, and I'm sure that my readers and my listeners, since she will be featuring on some podcasts, are going to love her, and I really just I want to welcome her to the family as well. And also, we are currently working on a monthly sports podcast. Now, this is one where I will not be the main host. I have gotten a host, my buddy Nate from high school, who you guys heard on earlier in this podcast. He'll be branching out, and he'll be starting our monthly sports podcast. I will be co-hosting with him, at least to start. And we do have a preview episode coming, so be looking out for the 10th of February is when we'll be releasing the first episode of that show. Now, if there's nothing else that we could cover, I just want to say thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate all the support. Please go ahead, check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Go everywhere, show us some support, send it to your friends, tell them to give it a listen. It really does mean the most to us. So, with that being said, I just want to say thank you, and we'll see you next week.